up, Ghana imports hundreds of millions of dollars worth of second-hand clothing every year.
The idea of everything right now is just to inspire everybody to shop or thrift vintage.
But accusations of inferior quality and poor waste management are earning local markets a messy reputation.
Second-hand clothing is a sustainable business.
But surely the second-hand clothing industry is still vulnerable to this situation where we have new lines coming out every year and people wanting those new products.
At the core of it is corporate social responsibility, because we are making a positive impact on the environment as well.
New research is linking the frequency of strokes to global warming. And do you wake up with itchy skin? As climate crisis impacts become clearer, the telltale signs of a creepy crawler which might be hiding in your sheets.
They're mostly bat bugs. 2 of them have jumped onto people.
Just 2 Degrees is on now.
I think this might be one of the most disgusting topics we've ever covered.
I'm never giving in, I'm never giving up. I'm a winner and I fight until my hands up. You can't defeat me, I'm different, I'm from another world. Don't try to stop me, I ain't stopping till I run the world.
We begin this episode with a bloody act, one that takes place in the shadows. What if I told you vampires live among us? But these aren't the bloodsuckers you see in the movies. There are no sharp fangs here. Instead, they rely on eyes that are highly sensitive to movement and a sense of smell that can detect and trace the scent of human blood. Welcome to the world of bedbugs.
In the dead of night, when everyone's asleep, bedbugs begin their feast.
Scary. It's scary. I don't want to get bedbugs, but it's scary.
These nocturnal pests love how we smell and taste. They come armed with saliva that numbs pain and permits the free flow of blood. But their bites don't go unnoticed. The evidence left behind, a trail of red welts. Bedbugs are the perfect predators.
C'est un insecte parasite, donc il peut rentrer chez n'importe qui, dans n'importe quelle circonstance, que ce soit dans les transports en commun.
In the mid-1940s, bedbugs were nearly wiped off the planet through the use of dichlorodyphenyl trichloroethane, or DDT. But the now banned insecticide had adverse effects on the environment. As a result, the species recovered by the early 2000s, and they spread by hitching rides on tourists and in their luggage, and subsequently infesting hotels and mattresses.
It doesn't matter if it's an old building like this or it's a new development like you see behind us. Anybody can bring it in at any time.
And it's no longer easy getting rid of them. Bedbugs have become immune to many of the methods used decades ago. Global warming, too, is giving the insects an opportunity to thrive by helping them multiply and stay active for longer.
Among these 6-legged blood thieves, I spoke with entomologist Dr. Richard Naylor. So, there are a lot of people out there who believe that climate change, global warming, is connected to the rise in not just mosquitoes and cockroaches, but also bedbugs. But you disagree. Why?
Yeah, I don't totally disagree. In some parts of the world, it's more significant. In the UK, we have a generally cool climate, and it was a long time before bedbugs reached us. They reached us in about the 1500s, but bedbugs have been plaguing human populations all over the world for thousands of years. You know, the Egyptians had them and the Greeks had them. And it took a long time for them to reach us. And the reason we think that is because we have a cooler climate. And so it wasn't until we built nice warm homes, heated them well and insulated them well, that the environment was suitable for them. Heat is absolutely important for any cold-blooded animal that relies on warmth from its environment. Then the temperature affects all of their metabolic processes, so everything happens faster. So definitely bedbugs breed faster when they're warmer. It's just that we're very good at controlling our climates, and they live in that. You never find them outside. You only find them associated with our beds and armchairs and things like that. Yeah.
Well, speaking of heat, we've had hotter months in the past year than in recent history. Wouldn't that heat outside have contributed to the insects breeding and for longer and more?
Yes, it all comes down to how well what impact that has on the temperature of your bedroom. So if you're in a very climate controlled environment, like you're using using air conditioning to keep the temperature down, then this will have a big impact on how much the bedbugs can breed. So a bedbug's developmental zero is 13 degrees, and that means the temperature below which they completely stop is 13 degrees. So eggs don't hatch and the adults become inactive and don't feed. And you can imagine in the UK, that would have been maybe half of the year. And now, as we've improved our housing and we heat our bedrooms more, they're active for much more. They're active all year, really. We keep our bedrooms at a nice toasty, maybe 20 degrees. 20 degrees is fine for bedbugs to be fully active all through the year. So they're no longer a seasonal pest.
Interesting. So for countries in the Northern Hemisphere, many of us are still kind of coming out of winter into spring. We still have pretty cool temperatures, I think, outside. If we wanted to get rid of our bugs that are inside enjoying, 20 degrees and above temperature, should we just open our door and windows and let that cool air in?
So that will make them go to sleep for sure. But the amazing thing about bedbugs is how long they can last without feeding. When they're in that cold, dormant phase, they can last, 18 months is the longest I've personally seen them last. Yeah. So they'll just hunker down and sleep, and they'll be fine. And as soon as you warm it up again, they'll become active again. In some countries, you have the option to go the other way. If you can get the temperature above 45 degrees, then that will kill them. So if you're in Australia and you don't use your air conditioning, you have the potential to reach a temperature that's warm enough to kill them. Yeah.
I believe you've worked with some engineering students to come up with a solution. What were your findings?
That was a really interesting project with KTH and engineering students from Sweden. And we have 2 test bedrooms where we release bedbugs in order to test bedbug monitoring devices. And so they brought the device that they've been developing, and we were able to use infrared cameras to watch what the bedbugs were doing when their monitoring device was set up in the room. And their device is designed to produce carbon dioxide, like the carbon dioxide that we breathe, and heat. So it mimics a warm-blooded host in the room, and we could film the bedbugs and see them all waking up and becoming excited that there was a host there. So they were certainly recognizing it. So that's good. It was clearly working. They were catching lots of bugs. Yeah.
A lot of scientists quite often develop a love affair with their subjects. Would you say that you love bedbugs?
It's possible. It might have come to that. I've been working on them for my whole adult life. I started working on them in about year 2000 or 2001 or something like that. And so it's been, and I've worked on them almost exclusively in that time. Yeah.
Before I let you go, Doctor, I know lots of insecticides don't work on bedbugs these days. How would you recommend people get rid of an infection?
Yeah, so the problem is that over the past few decades, we've reduced the range of insecticides that we're able to use to control them because of health grounds and on environmental grounds. And so really the one active ingredient that we use for almost all bedbug insecticides are pyrethroids, and overuse of this one compound or one class of compounds has meant that they're very resistant to them. You can still kill bedbugs with this if you spray them directly, but what you don't have is the residual protection that it used to provide, which means in a multiple occupancy building where they're moving between different apartments, they can keep coming back and reinfesting the same places over and over again. So it's very difficult for pest controllers to try and break that cycle of them constantly coming back to the places they've already treated. And so that's the key really in how to manage them is to stop them reinfesting the bed. So there are tools you can use for that. There are dishes that fit under the bed legs, and there are encasements that go around the bed to simplify the structure, because bedbugs, they'll get right inside like a divan bed base, and then you can't find them or do anything about treating them. So that's the kind of worst place to have bedbugs. But a frame bed is much easier to inspect and also to treat. There's different things you can do. If you're thinking of choosing a different bed, if you're having to throw away your bed, then replace it with ideally a metal frame bed, because they can't climb up the legs, so they can't get back into it. Yeah, as long as you keep it away from the wall and don't let your duvet touch the floor, then you're like an island.
So warmer weather could be aiding the bedbugs' agenda, but there's more than one way rising temperatures can cause problems for humans, especially for people with health problems. And since May is Stroke Awareness Month, we checked out the connection between strokes and the climate crisis.
Doctors say temperature extremes are wreaking havoc on human health.
I've had patients who've followed me for almost 25 years. And it's partly because I love my job that I've become an advocate for climate change and action regarding climate change. I see it impact my patients.
The medical journal Neurology recently published a first-of-its-kind study looking at 30 years of health records for patients in over 200 countries and territories. The findings? Dramatic shifts in temperatures affecting human health. links between the climate crisis and 500,000 stroke deaths worldwide.
En España son más o menos 11.300 personas y lo que hace el calor extremo es que amenaza la salud de las personas que ya de por sí tienen enfermedades crónicas. Son habitualmente personas mayores con enfermedades crónicas debilitantes. El calor extremo lo que hace es que les desestabiliza sus enfermedades crónicas. ¿Y habitualmente qué son? Son personas con insuficiencia cardíaca, con cardiopatía isquémica, con bronquitis crónica, con ictus o con insuficiencia renal.
Extremely high temperatures lead to dehydration, affect cholesterol, and slow blood flow. Very cold temperatures raise blood pressure. All risk factors that increase the likelihood of a stroke. But governments can take steps to mitigate these risks.
Hi ha mesures que són relativament barates, com per exemple coordinar ens públics, també fer censos de població vulnerable i coordinar-los a través dels serveis públics pot ser relativament barat, però hi ha mesures molt més cares, com per exemple el redisseny de les ciutats, la millora del parc d'habitatges, de manera que hi hagi millor condicionament de les cases.
But record temperatures are here and are hard to avoid, with many communities finding it increasingly difficult to adapt.
But how do we recognize the signs of a stroke? And how do we respond? You can save a life if you know how to be fast.
Dad, the side of your face is drooping. Mom?
It's probably nothing.
Dad, are you okay?
You're slurring. Why are you slurring? Raise your arms up in the air for me.
Dad, are you okay?
Gracie, call 911.
I just...
Honey?
Oh, Dad! Tim!
B for balance, E for eyes, F for face, it don't matter what side, A for arm, S for speech.
What do you do at the first sign of someone having a stroke? Be fast. Yup, it's an acronym. Let me spell it out for you. B equals balance. Is there a sudden loss of balance? E for eyes. Is there a sudden loss of vision in one or both eyes? F equals face. Does the person's face look uneven? A for arm. Does one arm drift down? Ask the person to raise both arms. S for speech. Does their speech sound strange? Ask them to repeat a phrase. And T for time. Every second, brain cells die during a stroke. Time is brain.
See the moral of it all is you gotta make a call. If you see somebody looking real sick, be fast, be wise, don't hesitate, you gotta move quick. Come on!
Well, you've had a stroke, but because you got here quickly, you're looking at a full recovery.
Well, for some, the connection between global warming and strokes is still a bit unclear. I spoke with Sheila Martins, president of the World Stroke Organization.
So the main risk factor for the stroke is hypertension. If you control hypertension, you can decrease 50% of strokes. But also we have other lifestyle risk factors that increase the risk of a stroke. And if you control the 10 main risk factors, we can decrease 90% of cases. What are the risk factors? Hypertension is the main, but also diabetes, dyslipidemia, atrial fibrillation, that is the main cardiac source to block the intracerebral vessel, tobacco, alcohol abuse, obesity, sedentarism, unhealthy diet, and depression and stress. So these 10 main risk factors, if controlled, we can reduce 90% of cases.
Those are a lot of factors. Almost scary, really, considering how many people eat improperly, unhealthily, how many people smoke, or generally don't have healthy lifestyles. And now multiple studies are linking global warming to increases in diseases like epilepsy, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's disease. But from my research, these diseases happen over time. So then what do you think is the connection between these diseases and heat?
Yeah, well, yeah, we know that climate changes are very important too, and now they are one of the main risk factors for several reasons. One of them is the air pollution that will increase a lot, also with the climate change that can affect the vessels and increase the risk of stroke. And also, we know that the difference in climate and climate change can increase the risk. We have more strokes during the winter time, for example, probably because during the winter time you have more higher blood pressure. Climate change is a challenge for us, and we are trying to study on how this can affect patients and what we can do to prevent in this case of the climate change. That is not easy. We cannot control, at least for now.
Yeah, and studies also seem to connect heat-related death to people with pre-existing neurological conditions. Does that suggest that heat doesn't really cause the condition, but rather increases the likelihood of a worst-case scenario?
Yeah, heat can increase too, but the connection is not very well established why this happens.
What are your priorities, as well as the organization, in terms of getting information out in this month that recognizes stroke, its potential to damage people's lives, their families, and of course, what we can do to prevent it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, usually we focus in everything that you can modify, mainly the lifestyle risk factors, because these we can act now, we can start now. So one thing is to recognize their own risk factors. We suggest to use mobile app that is free, called Stroke Riskometer. You can download in your cell phone. With this riskometer, you can answer the questions and calculate your own risk to have a stroke in 5 years and 10 years, compared with people in the same age and sex. And you can see what risk factors you have and how to modify them. So this is a strong tool to help us to know and to change our lifestyle.
And this next story is all about secondhand clothing, but there's still a health connection. Ghana imports millions of garments a week. Nearly half of them end up in the garbage, in landfills, or in the ocean. But as this environmental problem persists, local retailers have been trying to rebrand secondhand as vintage.
Basically, the idea of everything right now is just to inspire everybody to shop or thrift vintage. So we are not just saying secondhand goods are second-class stuffs. So we are just trying to inspire people that shopping vintage makes recycling better.
Meanwhile, retailers aren't happy with the reputation the local second-hand clothing industry has been developing. I spoke with Marlvin Owusu about it. He's an executive member of the organization Ghana Used Clothing. In reports, Ghana imports about 15 million items of second-hand clothing every week, also referred to it as dead white man's clothing. What exactly does that mean?
When they say dead man's clothing, in my local dialect, what they mean is obroni wewu. Pretty much what it is clothes, dead man's clothes is a local dialect in how they call used clothing. So pretty much that's what it is. It doesn't have any false or bad connotation per se, but in every dialect we have ways in which we communicate things.
Okay, got that point. Thank you for explaining it. So you represent the Ghana Used Clothing Dealers Association,
yes,
which is disputing claims about the percentage of clothing imported by Ghana that's considered waste. Talk about that.
For the first time in Ghana, the Ghana Used Clothing Association has commissioned a well-sourced academic report to dispel the myth in regards to our trade. It has been widely populated that 40% of what we import into Ghana, into Africa, is waste. But the report rightly states that waste is at a bare minimum of 5%. And even in regards to the 5%, there's a useful, it can have a good use. Some can be used for mops or as rags. Some can be used by mechanics in their line of work. some can be altered by tailors, some can be used for foams and mattresses. So there's so much that it can be used. But the 40% is widely off the mark. And even from a business perspective, I don't know which business person, which trader or which importer would import goods and have almost 40 to 50% of their stock and inventory as waste. It is not viable. The business model is not going to work. It is pretty much a loss-causing business that you're involved in.
Yeah, in a practical sense, how does that perception about these secondhand clothing imported as considered waste, how does that affect local retailers?
Of course, secondhand trade is one of the trades that I always say it does not discriminate. The reason I say that is it encompasses those in the low income bracket, it encompasses those in the middle income bracket, and it encompasses those in the high income bracket. And one, let's say, buying secondhand clothing does not impinge on why I'm buying local textiles.
But Marlvin, what makes the clothing secondhand? Why is it considered secondhand?
So it's called secondhand because number one, it's either been worn before, let's say more of it from the West, or it's factory rejects. So for example, a lot of the time you're going to see tax on some of the clothing items. So or secondhand, it's been worn before, but we need to always be aware of the fact that when we are importing secondhand clothing into the country, we are always making quality paramount. What I mean by that is the clothes that are coming into the country needs to be wearable. They need not to be tattered. They need not to be waste because we are not in a waste generating venture. We are in a business whereby we are extending the lifespan of clothes. And therefore, that is why it's called secondhand or sometimes used, if I can put it that way as well.
So then how do you want your government or maybe even Western policymakers to address this?
What I want my government or Western policymakers to do is that the narrative of secondhand clothing needs to change because based on our academic report, for too long a time, false propaganda has been going around. You see, secondhand clothing is a sustainable business. It falls within the Sustainable Development Goals, number 12 by the UN. It is a business that we are extending the lifespan of clothes. It takes about 1,000 water just to make a pair of new jeans. By me being involved in a used clothing space, I am extending the lifespan of a jean somewhere, of a t-shirt somewhere, of a dress somewhere. So at the core...
But Marlvin, surely you don't have control over it becoming waste when someone else uses it. You're just, retailers sell it, but you can't control what purchasers do with the clothing they buy.
That's why we said that, so the clothing line, of course, has a value chain. And that's why we get a spectrum of the secondhand clothing. But even when it gets to the bare minimum, there is usage for it. As I mentioned before, some can use it as mops, some can use it as rags, some tailors can alter into different clothing items.
Potentially, but surely the secondhand clothing industry is still vulnerable to this situation where we have new lines coming out every year and people wanting those new products.
So if people, so for example, if I get you, well, that is speaking more about fast fashion. But if I am more in the field of secondhand clothing, I'm actually extending the lifespan of clothes. Nowadays, everyone is talking about climate change. Everyone is talking about global warming. But in the space that we operate in, at the core of it is corporate social responsibility because we are making a positive impact on the environment as well. Because clothes are not ending up in the landfills, chemicals are not being produced, carbon dioxide emissions are not going into the atmosphere because we are extending the lifespan of clothes. And I think that it is important that we are made aware of this, that the latest figures shows that secondhand clothing annually contributes $29.5 million in taxes to the government. So we're not only making a societal impact, we're making a positive impact on our country as well. So I believe that with this platform, the European Union, their respective policies, because trying to ban secondhand clothing related will not be the right decision. What you're going to end up doing is you're going to allow more cheap fast fashion into the sphere, and that is rather going to create more problems for all of us.
I see your point on improving the Ghanaian economy. I do have a question about the brands that you import. Some of them, I'm not going to call names obviously, but some of them are tied to forced labor, the use of extreme use of plastics in their products. So them just engaging in the second-hand clothing industry is literally helping them continuing their bad practices. Does your organization take into account those brands that are engaged in bad practices that hurt the planet?
I'm not more involved in the fast fashion aspect. What I am more concerned, or what we are more involved in, is extending the lifespan of clothes to make sure that it's having a positive environmental impact, positive societal impact, positive economic impact.
And that is how we end this episode. Here are some chilly scenes from Chile. The capital Santiago is in the midst of its coldest autumn since the year 1950. The temperature was expected to dip to as low as 1 degree Celsius, which is in no way, form or fashion normal for the season. It's been a peculiar year for Chile. People there endured record heat during the summer. Now it's gone from extremely hot to extremely cold.